Going to call the meeting to order. It's 4 p.m. Calling the meeting to order. There is no amendments to the agenda. Do any members of council wish to make any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder for motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Tedesco. All in favor? All hands rising. Motion is carried. Okay, we have no deputations this afternoon. Oh, we do have deputations. No, we don't. Sorry. Bosses are fogging up. We have no minutes to approve. There's no correspondence. No reports from committees. Okay, reports from administration. We have reports item 6.1 from the CDO, Ms. Davis, and John Lorenowich from JML Engineering. So go ahead.
Okay, so this meeting was initially called to keep with the schedule we had for our Brompton, Newton, Frost, and Stadler water infrastructure project. So with that initial schedule, we had the water main relining for Newton, Frost, and Stadler to occur this fall. And to keep on track with that, we had the tendering process close on August 30th, was reviewed. The recommendation would then come to council today to award that tender. The successful proponent would then be notified by the end of the week, with construction and preparation starting next week and officially September 13th with the contractors on site. However, with the information that came out of the responses to tender, there has been a little bit of a change in schedule. So the replacement portion is being now replaced in the spring, the relining portion initially to be completed this fall, September, October, and the replacement to be completed in spring and summer of 2022. So there was an addendum as part of this tendering process to see what the cost savings or additions would be to have the project completed in spring of 2022. So that's just the relining portion being moved from the fall to May and June of 2022. So to ensure there's enough time for the setup and chlorination of the temporary potable water system, etc., that's now changed. So one response to the tender was received from Main Rehabilitation 2011 Incorporated with the option to complete the relining in May and June. So this option would result in a cost savings of $30,000 approximately. So rather than having to split up their team and mobilize them to have that completed this time of year, they've presented that option at a cost savings of $30,000 to complete it in May and June of 2022. So after further review by JML Engineering, the contract administration and engineering firm for this project, there were a couple of items within the bid response that they would like to further negotiate with the contractor. So this bid is irrevocable for 60 days, which allows for negotiation and discussion with the contractor prior to awarding the contract. So initially we were hoping to award the contract. However, with the kind of change of schedule, we now have a bit more time to award the project. We're not as pressed for time to complete everything. So with the additional cost savings of $30,000, along with the potential to negotiate the costs presented in the response to tender, we are deferring the award of the contract to a later date within that 60-day irrevocable period from the closing time of August 30th, 1 p.m. to allow JML and their team to negotiate the tender on our behalf and come to a more desirable price for this project. So originally we would be awarding, but now we're kind of giving council an update that we will be deferring the award of the relining portion to a later date. So if there are any questions regarding, further questions regarding the schedule, why it's being deferred, we have John here from JML as well, and any information that I can provide.
Yeah, I have a question if I may. JML Engineering will be doing the engineering portion. Is there going to be a different firm that's going to do the actual excavation or whatever that needs to be done?
Yes, so JML was brought in as the engineering services and contract administration.
Okay.
So they kind of manage the contract part of it,
Overall, yeah.
and then they help prepare the tender documents for each of the various components. So the relining is one contractor, and then the replacement of the Brompton water, sewer, et cetera, will be another.
And JML will be
General.
responsible for getting those people in place and
Yes, so they
Okay.
are assisting us with the tender documents. We do the same process where the bids go out. The companies present their responses to those tenders. They review them, provide that recommendation. We do that final review with them, and then bring that recommendation to council for the final award of contract. And then the JML also has their team on the ground for site inspections throughout the duration of the construction process.
I just had a question on the funding. Have you talked to the funding?
Right
about
now,
changing the
everything is on pause because of the election. So,
schedule? So it's okay then? Or-
right now, it's like we can't disclose who's funding what.
Mhm.
We can't, the signs can't go up.
Yeah.
So we're in a blackout period right now. So typically the funder signs would be going up 30 days before construction happens, but with the election, nothing can be put up until we receive further direction
No.
from the government after the election.
I mean, like, when you have to send in funding reports on like.
Yeah, so all of
status
that
the
continues
project,
as, yeah.
It'll be okay that the things
Yep,
have
so-
changed the timeline?
yeah, so we've been keeping them updated. There is a delay in their response to all of the emails that are coming through.
Right.
In terms of reporting documentation, transfer payment agreements, that you can still move ahead with that project. You have to report everything manually rather than using the online system until all of those contract agreements are signed and delivered. There's just still a delay in that process, so.
John, can I ask you, the process of relining the water lines, will there be breaks in the water line during this process?
There will be a need to break the water line at a half a dozen or so locations. That's actually one of the items we are negotiating with the low bidder at this time. Just to streamline, to minimize the number of the holes that we need to dig. But they need to dig holes, a certain number of holes along the length of the relining system to cut the pipe and to enter from one end and to more or less snake their device through and come out the other end as they go through a cleaning process, a scraping process, a flushing process, and then the actual application of the relining. It's all done essentially by pulling like a mule, if you use that term, through the pipe. But you have to gain entry at one end and you pull it out at the other along the length of the pipe. So to simply answer that question, about a half dozen holes are needed in order to do that along the full length of the project that we're looking at. So that is an essential part of the relining process.
Thank you.
Do any other council members have questions for Ms. Davis or John? Seeing none?
So we will be coming back to council once the negotiations have been complete to award the final contract for this portion of the project. This is kind of more of an update for you, but since we had already scheduled a meeting by the time everything came through.
Is there going to be a rush during this time, like next spring with all the infrastructure stuff, or is it going to be difficult to sort of get the bodies to do the work? Because
So the tender documents go out. So because this has already essentially, once it's been awarded, the contractor knows that this is happening, so they can make the arrangements they need to have their team in place for the work. And then similarly for the other portion, those tender documents actually go out this fall, late winter. So those construction teams who are doing the other part have their crews in place. Here's our mobilization date.
potentially construction people are sort of standing waiting to go.
Yep.
And I'll add 2 points here to this construction process. Tentatively, you're going to have 2 contractors on site next year, starting in the spring. with a potential overlap of construction, only from the timing perspective, but not from the footprint to which they're working. They're two distinctly separate sites, even though truthfully they do come together at one point. But we can carefully coordinate that so that one contractor is working on one part at one time before the other contractor steps in and carries on from that point. So you will have two contractors in Red Rock, May and June of next year, working at the same time, but in two distinct areas.
John, can you describe what the two basic differences are of the functions that the construction people will be doing?
Well, the one contractor, this current one, once awarded, will be doing the relining work. So their role is to clean and apply a cement mortar lining to the interior walls of your existing water main pipe so that it improves the flow and improves the performance and the quality of water within the system when it's done. The other contractor is part of the sewer, sanitary sewer replacement, storm sewer replacement, repaving, and new water main. In that particular area, they're going to be replacing the existing water main lines with new water main. And that was driven partly because of the application for the funding, but also partly because of the recognition that the water main construction in those areas were more vulnerable and prone to historic problems, if you will. And it was deemed more feasible to replace the water main along Brompton than it was to reline, because we were already opening up the street to dig up the sanitary and the storm anyways. So once you remove the pavement and start going with open excavation, it's just more feasible. You've got it all opened up to go in and dig out the water main instead of relining it at that stage.
John, will the water line, you said it'll be more efficient. It's not going to be expanded, is it? If you put in, say, a concrete or whatever inside, isn't that going to narrow the flow water capacity?
It's a combination. Technically, you are making the size of the opening slightly smaller, but you're gaining from the fact that you've now made a very smooth walled pipe. It's also durable, and it's also, well, in essence, cleaner than a pipe that has a lot of buildup that's occurred over many years on it from usage. So you are correct. The opening gets a tad smaller, but because of the improved hydraulic performance, you actually have a net gain.
John, I have another, sorry to be taking up all this, but I just have another quick question. Obviously, there's going to be a replacement of the surface, the asphalt surface on these streets.
Correct.
Will there be an opportunity for the residents to connect with the contractors that will eventually be doing the paving, so that perhaps they can take advantage of having pavers maybe do driveways and things of that sort?
Yes, there will definitely be that opportunity. We are purposely trying to have that aspect considered as part of the construction available to the residents so that they would have that opportunity. Similarly, we're doing the same thing with their with their individual water services. If they're wanting to elect to perhaps enlarge the service supply to their residences, to their individual residences, if they want to look after replacing the water line from the curb stop to their homes, they'll be given that opportunity at this point in time as well.
John, that's fantastic. You're killing three birds with one stone here. So,
well, not everybody may take advantage of it, but the opportunity will be there for them.
bring some more stones.
So just to note that service expansion and the paving and curb stop, curbing, et cetera, is all for the Brompton section, not for the relining section. So when it comes to the full excavation, that's where the opportunity for residents to upgrade their services available. When it comes to the relining portion, that's just access pits in the middle of the street essentially. So we're not then working on the service lines to each of the residents on the Newton, Frost and Statler section. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And just one question, just to Councillor McDonald on her question. Were you asking if that will affect our funding, moving it? Is that what?
Yeah, just because sometimes when you apply for funding, you have to have like point form of what your cost is, what the date is that it's gonna happen. And then if things change, sometimes you get a hard time justifying why it changed, or they don't like you changing it, or that's just what I was asking.
Yep, no, and
Yeah, so we have been in touch with the funders that this is the situation that has come out of it. One of them is on holidays and there are delays in terms of the system responding, but typically, as long as you keep them informed throughout the process, we give them, here's what we're hoping if everything goes well. Keep them informed throughout the process and they're normally pretty understanding. With that, the scope of the project hasn't changed. And right now the budget hasn't changed at this time, so it's still within those initial parameters, but it's keeping them in the loop and having those discussions with them.
yeah, we don't foresee any problems with that. That's a good question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, we have no bylaws to present at this meeting, no new business, no unfinished business. We will not be going in closed session this evening or this afternoon. Okay, item 12, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council. Can I please have a mover and seconder for motion to pass the bylaw? And that's to confirm the proceedings of special meeting of council, this meeting. Okay, Councillor Park and Councillor Tedesco. Okay, all in favor? All hands rising, motion is carried. Okay, time being 4:16, I'd like to call this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I'd like to thank
Thank you, John.
Ashley and John for their wonderful information sharing, as usual.
And